All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So last week we finished our 16-week-long series on children or Christian parenting. But now we're gonna go through a mini series, a very short one. Probably we're just gonna have two lectures in this series. I've entitled this Adult Sabbath School series, "The World Behind Exodus." So this should be a help for us as we are going through the book of Exodus in our afternoon worship or in our liturgy of the sacrament. As you know, later we will we'll look at Exodus chapter 2, verses 11 to 12, and some of the information that we will learn this afternoon would be helpful in our understanding of later sermon and in the sermons to come. All right? So we are going to look at um, pagan literature. Okay, not necessarily. We're not going to look at biblical authors this time. Of course, we're still gonna look at some verses, but we're not saying that they are that we are keeping them at par with the authority of the Bible. No, we're not saying that. However, we are recognizing the common graces of God and His work in providence in this world, right? That He works through even in pagan literature, even in the pagan cultures, right? So I hope that this would help us understand Exodus. And so I entitled this lecture, "The Gods of Egypt, Reading Exodus Polemically." Next week, we're going to look at the pharaohs of Egypt, reading Exodus historically. But today, again, the gods of Egypt, reading Exodus polemically. Now, teka, anong sabihin ng polemically? What do you mean? Now, look at the word polemics. Okay, we're probably familiar with the term apologetics. Apologetics, as we know, it is our defense of the faith. Polemics is yun yung other side of the coin, which is attack. If apologetics, you are defending the faith, polemics, you're in fact attacking. Right? Now, if we look at the Bible, I would say most literature in the Bible are polemics. We see that many times in the writings of Paul. Okay, napakarami niyang polemics, no? Sa Book of Acts, meron pa nga kay Luke. Meron din sa mga letters niya, especially sa 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, ilang beses niya inaatake yung Corinthian church. Okay, may purpose siya, not just for the sake of attacking them and proving himself right. No, the apostle was not like that. But polemics is something na, kumbaga, para mas ma-realize noong recipient how foolish their sin is. Okay? And how great the wisdom of God in His Word is. Okay? So polemics, as a definition, polemics is the branch of theological science that aims to attack, to expose, and refute false doctrines that oppose the truth of God. Just as apologetics come from the Greek word apologia, ang term na apologia ay makikita natin sa sulat ni Peter when he mentioned that we must be ready to defend the faith. Yun yung word na defend, ang Greek nun ay apologia. Okay? So sabihin yung apology is not really an original term to say, it doesn't mean sorry. No, apology means defense. Thank you. Apology means defense, okay, or defending. Now, polemics also comes from a Greek word which is polemos. Ibig sabihin, battle or war. Eh, makita natin, in fact, Paul, as an apostle, was instructing Timothy, who was an elder of Ephesus, who's saying, okay, be polemic. Be polemic in your in your office of the eldership. In your preaching, make sure that you attack what is foolish, what is sinful. Okay? Hindi ibig sabihin pag umaatake tayo, hindi yung parang kumbaga in a bad way, no? Gumagamit pa rin siya ng salita ng Diyos para mas lalong ma-prove yung ka-foolishness ng kasamaan. Okay? Sabi pa nga niya kay Titus rather, I'm sorry, not Timothy, Titus. Okay? who was in Crete, not in Ephesus. Okay, Timothy was in Ephesus. Sorry. Okay, Titus, he says, okay, for there are many who are insubordinate. There are many who are empty talkers, deceivers. They would deceive you into thinking that this is right, although those are wrong. Especially those of the circumcision party or the Jewish people who says that, who now teaches in a Judean cult and teaches, kumbaga parang yung idea nila ng grace is that you ought to earn something. No, rather, once you have received the grace of God, now you can, parang you have been considered sinless already, and so technically you're free. Not just free from sin, parang free to sin. Parang ganitong dating. And so he's saying, no, they're deceivers, according to Paul. And then he says, okay, they must be silenced. Okay, they must be silenced. Through these arguments, through these polemic arguments, they needed to be silenced. Okay, since they are upsetting whole families by teaching for shameful gain what they ought not to teach. Okay, according to John D. Currid, and we will rely heavily sa kanyang book, which I highly recommend. The title of the book is Against the Gods. In page 25, he says, and he defines polemics as the use by biblical writers of the thought forms and stories that were common, not coming, that were common in ancient Near Eastern culture, while filling them with radically new meaning. The biblical authors take well-known expressions and motifs from the ancient Near Eastern milieu and apply them to the person and work of Yahweh and not to the other gods of the ancient world. The primary purpose of polemical theology is to demonstrate emphatically and graphically the distinctions between the worldview of the Hebrews and the beliefs and practices of the rest of the ancient Near East. He's saying, sobrang wise ng mga biblical authors na ito, and later on we will specify, no, si Moses yung mas pag-aaralan natin. Ang ginagawa ng mga biblical authors is that gumagamit sila ng mga Egyptian or pagan literatures, gagamitin nila yon at isusulat nila yon at ipapabasa doon sa contemporary readers nila who also understood those pagan literatures. Now, the biblical writer is not appropriating or attributing what he wrote to their gods, however, to the one true God, Yahweh. Okay? And so the point here, specific to Moses, his writing is not just a narrative. Okay? So whenever you read Genesis, most especially whenever you read Exodus, we're not just reading it as if Moses is telling us what happened in history. It's not just a narrative. Primarily it is. However, it is also a polemic. He wrote the book of Exodus to, in fact, attack. Wait, Exodus chapter 1? Exodus chapter 1 says, there was a new Pharaoh who already forgot Joseph, and now who is basically forcing the Israelites to labor, and now he's killing infants. Are you telling us that that's an attack to the modern day or to the contemporary pagan reader of the book of Exodus? The answer is yes. It is a polemic, not just a narrative. It is also a polemic against the pagan religions of Egypt in Canaan in their time. Sorry, nalilate ako sa slides. Hindi na ako sanay mag-slides. Nakarelay ako sa... But anyway, you have the handouts with you. So let's look at the dates first. Okay, the dates these are very important dates. We will also look at these dates next week as we look at the pharaohs of Egypt. As I've said a while ago, there are other views, but I've mentioned in the previous sermons in Exodus that we are taking what we call the early date view, and we will discuss that next week. Okay, but let me just give you some of the dates. Okay, Jacob and his family arrived in Egypt. This was a time of famine. They left, if you remember, they left Canaan. They left the promised land, and they went to Egypt because of the famine in Canaan, and because, as you know, Joseph became the second in command in Egypt. And so there were a lot of resources there. And so they met Joseph there. That was the year 1662 before Christ, BC. Okay? And then, as we know, sila ay tumagal doon. Again, we'll look at these dates next week. The actual parting of the Red Sea, the actual exodus from the nation of Egypt or from the country of Egypt was 1447 BC. Okay? And from that time na nagpart yung Red Sea at nakalaya ang mga Israelita, doon na nagsimula ang pagsusulat ni Moses. It took him, as you know, as you can see, 40 years. Up to 1407 BC. Doon niya sinulat, hindi lang ang Exodus, but the entire Pentateuch. Okay, when we mention Pentateuch, it's nabanggit din yung kanina sa morning, right? It refers to the first 5 books of the Bible, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Okay? And so again, now when we look at some of the pagan literatures, remember these pagan works, or some of them are heroic figures, they are but mythological narratives. Ito ay mga sinulat, narrative sila, sinulat ng mga pagano, at ito ay naging mythology, ito ay naging myth, at in those stories, it recounts the gods of larger-than-life human heroes. Okay? In fact, if you look at many of these pagan literatures, yung dinidescribe nilang Diyos, it's as if parang tao talaga. Okay? So let's look at Exodus as a polemic. Not just a narrative, hindi lang nagkukwento ng history. Ang Exodus din ay inaatake. Aatake siya ng mga pagans. Okay? Pagan gods or believers of the pagan gods. It is an attack. Okay? That's what polemic means. Exodus as a polemic against Egyptian pagan gods and heroic figures. Let's look at how Moses presents Pharaoh in the book of Exodus. In Egypt, in ancient Egypt, you have to understand that Pharaoh was deified. Tinatrato siyang Diyos, si Pharaoh. Okay? According to Bruce Gore, in his book, Historical and Chronological Context of the Bible, he said, during the 5th dynasty, the status of the Pharaoh ended somewhat as the king took the title son of Re. Si Re was a known ancient pagan Egyptian god. Okay? Whereas in previous dynasties, kings were deemed to be the earthly manifestation of the god Horus. Now, see, Horus is another god. You might be familiar, you might have seen some Egyptian figure in Google or in the internet na kung saan meron siyang ulo ng falcon, si Horus yun. Okay? The new title reduced the king to a son of God. Dati, manifestation or incarnation daw siya ng Diyos na si Horus. Okay? Lahat ng Pharaoh ay incarnation ng Diyos na si Horus. And then, at some point, bumaba yung status niya at tinawag na lang siyang son of Re. That's another god. Marami pong Diyos ang Egyptians. They are, hindi sila monotheistic, polytheistic sila. Okay? Poly means madami. Theist meaning Diyos. Marami silang worship na Diyos. Okay? And so, at some point, bumaba yung kanyang status into just a son of God. Son of the God Re. Okay? The king's divine authority was further eroded when the temples were erected at pyramid sites for the celebration of the cult of Re rather than in worship to the king. Now, kung mapapansin ninyo sa Exodus, hindi sinulat ni Moses si Pharaoh doon sa Exodus na as if sinasamba siya ng mga Egyptians. In fact, you need to understand the context of it so that you would know that he's in fact considered or deified or at least considered the Son of God. We need to know it historically. We need to understand the context because Moses does not use it. The fact that Moses does not ever use the deification or yung pagiging Diyos-Diyosan ni Pharaoh, right, is in fact already a polemic Which means na parang minamaliit niya si Pharaoh. That's already clear in Exodus chapter 1, right? Why? How? Whenever the Pharaoh plans to do something, immediately how Moses writes it, na parang, okay, the joke's on this guy. Right? What happened when he saw the Israelites multiplying? It says there that the Pharaoh was afraid. You wouldn't write a deified figure as someone who becomes afraid of people multiplying. So dun pa lang sa Exodus chapter 1, Moses was presenting Pharaoh as just a human figure. Hence, ito ay atake sa isang Egyptian contemporary reader ng Exodus or ng Pentateuch. At mas lalo pa, nung hindi na siya tinatratong si Horus, tinatrato na siyang son of God, na ang mas sinasamba na ng mga Egyptians ay si Re. Nagtayo na sila ng mga temple, nandun na yung mga statue, sculpture ni Re, at hindi yung sculpture ni Pharaoh. Na maraming sculptures ang Pharaoh, of course, but mostly, especially sa temple, nung buhay pa yung Pharaohs, ang sinasamba si R.E. Re. Okay? Ang hirap kasi sabihin ng Re. Okay? Re. Or Ray. Kaya R.E. na lang. Sorry. So, again, the point here is that Moses writes about Pharaoh polemically, not just as an individual political ruler, but as a direct theological critique of Egyptian divine kingship, stripping him of his perceived cosmic power and reducing him to a powerless human king under Yahweh's absolute sovereignty. Right? Exodus chapter 1 pa lang. Exodus chapter 1 pa lang, stripped off na si Pharaoh ng kanyang pagiging sovereign. Right? He wanted to secretly kill the infant the infant boys, the infant Israelite boys. What do we read a few words after that? Ano nangyari? God saves the infants. Specifically, God saves the deliverer, Moses. Now, si Pharaoh wanted the daughters to live, the boys to be killed, the daughters to live. After saying that, anong sinulat ni Moses? Pinakita niya how the daughters, how the women were actually in action in saving the men or saving the baby boys. Pinipresent ni Moses, nakatawa-tawa si Pharaoh. As in, nakakatawa talaga siya at nakakaawa. Ganon niya sinusulat ito polemically. And if he does that, if that's the authorial intent, if that was the intent of the author, Moses, we also ought to look at Hebrew, or look at Exodus as if, okay, this guy is a self-proclaimed divine figure, but he's so foolish. We also ought to read Exodus polemically. Number 2, we have the birth of the deliverer. Okay, the birth of the deliverer. Now, we have to understand that there's a known Egyptian myth that is called the myth of Horus. I mentioned Horus a while ago. He was one of the ancient famous gods of Egypt. Okay, Horus. And you might have seen statues of Horus as an infant being carried by a woman whose name was Isis, right? Again, that is an ancient story that predated Exodus. Okay? And in that story of the myth of Horus, which was what? 2400 BC. And that is the reason why I showed you the dates of the actual Exodus, right? 1400 plus BC, because this myth predates the actual Exodus. Not only the actual Exodus, but also, most importantly, the date when Moses wrote Exodus. The myth of Horus was an existing pagan literature prior Exodus. Okay. So in this story, quickly, born into, I'm just going to read a handout, born into immediate peril, from his murderous uncle Seth. So, summary lamang po ito. Okay? Meron siyang tito, uncle, si Seth. Gusto siyang papatayin. Okay? The infant god Horus, the child of his parents Osiris, the husband, Isis, the wife. Horus was saved through the fierce devotion of Isis, who what? Who hid Horus in a papyrus thicket. Tinago si Isis, si Horus sa isang papyrus thicket to protect him. Along the river, not the Nile River, but the Chemis, to escape danger. Sounds family, right? Sounds familiar, right? And then a second familial related female servant, or served rather, as Horus' guardian nung siya ay kinuha, at ang pangalan nun ay ang kanyang tita na si Nephthys. And then Horus grew. He ascended as the supreme king and the first state god of Egypt. And he's known in Egypt as, of course, this is just a myth. And because this predates even the kingdom of the pharaohs in Exodus chapters 1 and onwards, because he was made God, si Horus, they believe na yung mga pharaoh ay incarnation ni Horus. Okay? According to Gary Rensburg in his book Moses as equal to Pharaoh, he said, furthermore, the biblical writer utilized the venerable Horus myth in order to present Moses as equal to Pharaoh. The young Moses is akin to the young Horus, the latter a mythic equal of the living Pharaoh. At the same time, the Pharaoh of the biblical story has been transformed from his Egyptian mythological position of the persecuted, that is Horus, to that of the persecutor, that is Seth. And so here's how Moses polemically, here's how he's attacking this myth. The Egyptians knew, or tinatrato nila ang mga pharaohs na incarnation ni Horus. Sino ba si Horus sa myth of Horus? He was persecuted by Seth. Seth was a vile ruler. He was a persecutor. And Horus was the persecuted. Right? And so in Egyptian culture, in the time of Moses, there's this ideology or there's this idea that every pharaoh that is on the throne ay incarnation ng Diyos na si Horus na sa storya ay persecuted. How did Moses write Exodus? He wrote Exodus in a way na mas magmumukha pang ang Horus si Moses. As si Pharaoh ay yung mas lalong mukhang Seth. In that way niya, inaatake si Pharaoh sa sulat ng Exodus. Now, does it mean na hindi talaga totoo yung si Moses ay isang infant at siya'y nilagay sa little ark at nilagay siya sa Nile at nakuha siya ni Pharaoh's daughter at lumaki si Moses doon sa Egypt? No, totoo yun. As we know, we hold to the inspiration of the writers, especially Moses, who was a biblical author. Oh, anyway. So, again, sinulat ni Moses yung Exodus para mas mukhang Horus pa nga si Moses. At mas mukhang persecutor or mas mukhang Seth si Pharaoh. Okay? Kasi ang idea ng mga Egyptians, teka, si Pharaoh ang incarnation ng isang persecuted na si Horus. But that's not the case. Right? In that way, Moses wrote this para i-atake yung idea ng mga Egyptians na, hoy, hindi yan incarnation ni Horus. Hindi incarnation ni Horus yung si Pharaoh. Now, going back dun sa thought ko kanina na ngayon, bumalik na. So, ibig sabihin ba nito, kinopya ni Moses? Pinlagiarize ba ni Moses ang myth of Horus? Well, hindi. Hindi niya necessarily, kasi pag sinabi natin plagiarize, talagang kinopya niya napakalalaking mga chunks noon. No, kumuha siya ng mga konsepto at salita para yung mga readers nung time na yon, they would understand na nagmi-minister sa kanila sa idea nila ng kultura ng mga time na yon na mali pala yung idea nila, yung understanding nila of culture. yung understanding nila of religion. And so when Moses was writing Exodus, he was what? Narrating history. But at the same time, he's saying, oy, whatever you understood about your God, that's wrong. Okay? And so nangyari kay Moses, inilagay talaga siya sa little ark at binalot talaga yon with bitumen and pitch in a papyrus thicket by Jochebed. That is true. That is history. However, we also see that as a clear, obvious attack to the myth. Mamaya mas bibigyan natin ng pansin yan. Merong term na tinatawag tayo dyan. Yun yung tinatawag na cultural remembrance. But later, obviously, Moses was not copying what the myth was about, but that's what he wrote was in fact history, and he wrote it to attack their idea of, or the theology that comes out of that myth. Okay, sige. Let's continue. Number 3, look at the exile return motive. Okay? Now let's look at some of the dynasties, and we'll look at this again next week. Okay? Now, if we're reading Exodus chapter 1 and chapter 2, remember, and di ba sa Exodus chapter 1 ang sabi doon, there is a new king who does not even know who Joseph was. That new king, papangalanan natin siya next week, pinangalanan natin siya in the previous sermons, dinala niya yung bagong dynasty na tinatawag na New Kingdom. And so we're looking at, whenever we read Exodus chapter 1, nasa 18th dynasty na yon. Ilang centuries na ang nakalipas mula sa pinakauna pang dynasty. Okay? Kung aatras pa tayo doon sa 11 to 12 dynasty, yun ang tinatawag na Middle Kingdom. During that time, doon nagkaroon ng another mythological narrative na tinatawag na the story of Sinuhe. Okay? The story of Sinuhe, it was written in the Middle Kingdom, which again tells us it predates the time of Exodus. Okay? So, let me just share some summary of that story. Mabilis. The narrative begins in year 30 of King Amenemhet the First's reign. While standing near the royal quarters, Sinuhe overheard a messenger secretly delivering the news of the king's death. Upon realizing the Pharaoh had passed, Sinuhe was seized by an overwhelming and inexplicable panic. Fearing that the transition of power would trigger sever civil disorder and violence, I think this is severe civil disorder and violence, he fled to seek a hiding place. He escaped Egypt and crossed the Nile. Okay, that's the story of Sinuhe. And then he was taken in by Amienshi, the ruler of Upper Retenu. And then Amienshi welcomed him, married him to his eldest daughter, and granted him a portion of his finest land. Now, he went back to Egypt and he claimed an Egyptian position. Now, again, some of it, parang medyo katunog siya ng nangyari kay Moses. Nangyari kay Moses, you know what happened? He fled Egypt. He fled to Midian. And then later on, after 40 years, he went back to Egypt. But the difference is that Moses was unlike Sinuhe. Hindi niya hinabol yung Egyptian possession. Si Moses, iba yung habol niya. Habol niya, ma-free or ma-deliver yung people of God outside of Egypt. But there is that exile return motive. That again, a contemporary of Moses who reads Exodus may, again, remember the story of Sinuhe, just as they can remember the story of Horus, who was delivered when he was an infant through the Chemish River. In the flight of Moses from Egypt to Midian, in what's written in Exodus chapter 2, a contemporary of Moses might remember the famous pagan story of Sinuhe. Okay? According to Currid, again, the biblical account of Moses' flight from and return to Egypt is thus acutely anti-Egyptian. The Hebrew writer, well versed in commonly known Egyptian literature, plays of the table of the tale rather, sorry, of the tale of Sinuhe and turns it upside down and inside out. By use of attack, by use of polemical ending, the author taunts Egypt and Egypt's nationalistic fervor. Moses doesn't crave Egypt or her kingly deity. He longs only to serve Yahweh. And so nung sinulat niya, yung Exodus, parang pinapakita niya na, see, itong deliverer na to is unlike one who they revered. He's unlike Sinuhe, who was after what? Position, who was after a nationalistic fervor rather, but he served Yahweh. So again, this is an attack to Egypt. Yung story na yon was an attack to Egypt. Yes, nauna yung story of Sinuhe, right? Nauna yon bago yung actual event of Moses being born. And yet, the wisdom of God through Moses' skills in writing, Moses' wise thinking, isinulat yun in a way but that he wrote actual history. At the same time, he wrote it in a way that would come to mind a story that exists, which again attacks that belief. Ganon ang ginawa ni Moses sa Exodus. Fourthly, the I am who I am. Probably familiar with this in Exodus chapter 3. This is the declaration of God. When he was asked kung sino siya, he said, I am who I am. In verses 14 to 15, God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God said to Moses, say this to the people of Israel. Kung makikita nyo, parang inulit ng Diyos. When he was speaking about himself, he's calling himself, I am. Now he's telling Moses, okay, if you're going to say it to the people, here's my name. He says, the Lord. Or in translations, other translations, he says, Yahweh. When he's talking about himself, he calls himself I am, which of course in the Gospels, we remember Jesus Christ uses that term and he claims it for himself, rightfully so, because he's God. He says, I am, when he's describing himself or whenever he's calling, he's describing who he is, he says, I am. But if you're going to talk about me to other people, okay, here's my name. Yahweh. Okay? The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and thus I am to be remembered throughout all generations. Okay? Later, even this, Moses wrote this as an attack to a known God in Egypt, who also used an Egyptian phrase na kapareho nito. Okay? But let me just look at, let us just look at kung paano na-derive or paano, what does it mean? Okay? We'll look at some Hebrew words. And by the way, Hebrew is a very, very complicated language. More complicated than Greek. Okay? Ancient Hebrew did not have vowels, did not have the past, present, future tenses. It's more on the perfect, imperfect tenses. So mas complicated itong language na ito. Okay? But it came from the word haya or haya, kasi wala ang vowel, okay, which means exist. Okay? Haya. Okay, dun ba? Haya. Exist or to be. Ang ibig sabihin nun sa English ay to be. Familiar ba kayo sa Shakespeare? Ano to? To be or not to be. Hamlet, okay, Macbeth ang nasa isip ko. Hamlet, right. To be or not to be is a phrase that questions existence. To be or not to be. Doon galing yung, it was derived from haya. Okay? Haya. To be. To exist. Now, God uses that and applies it to Himself. Siya lamang ang kayang mag-apply na itong word na to sa sarili niya. And He's saying, nagiging first person singular yung to be. Nagiging I am. Pag tinranslate mo siya sa Hebrew, ehiye. Or pwedeng I will be. Okay? And so this is the Hebrew term whenever God talks about Himself. Yun yung I am sa Exodus chapter 3. It is ehiye in Hebrew. Ehiye. Okay? Now, in that same passage, I think it's verse 15, sabi niya, ehiye, I am, and but we hindi natin pwede i-apply yun sa sarili natin, yung I am. Kay God lang yun. Okay? Self-existent siya. So, kung haya means exists or to be, yung I am, sinasabi niya, I self-exist. Okay? No one causes me to exist, is what he's saying. So, applicable lang yung ehiye sa kanya. Applicable lang yung I am sa kanya. So, hindi natin yun iuulit, I am. Dahil si God, sinasabi niya, I am, ako din, I am. Hindi natin yun gagawin. Now, sinabi niya kay Moses, okay, ito yung pangalan ko, Ehiye, but when you're gonna use my name, ito ibibigay ko sa'yo. He is the Lord. Or, in Hebrew, dito napapasok yung 4-letter word na tinatawag na tetragrammaton, Yahweh. And look at, again, sa Hebrew, wala siyang vowel. Wala siyang vowel talaga. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yan in English, He is, or He will be. So He's saying, okay, when you're gonna talk about me, say my name, it is Yahweh. But I'm gonna talk about myself, when I'm gonna talk about myself, I'm gonna say I am. I'm gonna use I am. Okay? So ganun siya. And then of course, after many years, ang mga ancient Israelites, they don't use the term Yahweh because they find it so sacred that they don't even utter the name of Yahweh. And so they used a separate term, which is what we know as Adonai, which is also a Hebrew term, Adonai. Nang Adonai, ang ibig sabihin nun in Hebrew is Lord or Master. Kaya yun na lang yung ginagamit nila instead na tawagin nilang Yahweh, si God, kasi sobrang sacred nga nung pangalan ng Diyos. Hence, yung mga modern translations ngayon, kinuha rin yun at para mas maintindihan natin na Yahweh yon, hindi lang yung usual na L-O-R-D, Lord or Master, ginawa nilang capital pagdating sa Exodus. Okay? Dahil nga capitalize yung YHWH. And so there you have Lord. Okay? Now, before the Exodus, there was in 2040 to 1640 BC, merong naka-inscribe sa tomb ng isang pharaoh na si Pharaoh Seti the First, at yon ay ang the Book of the Heavenly Cow. Marami dito sa mga writings na to inscribe sa bato. Okay? And there in that Book of the Heavenly Cow, we see the proclamation of their God, whose name was Re. And Re says, I am that I am, I will not let them take action. Sinabi to ni Re, sorry. Sinabi to ni Re, sorry. Especially dun sa story, kasi may mga nagre-rebelde na tao against sa Diyos, He declares, no, I am that I am, and I will not let them take action. Okay? So that's a very familiar phrase, right? I am that I am. Okay? Which, ang ibig sabihin nito, especially sa Egyptians, He's saying, I am who I am, the one who is within is the one who is within, I am entirely self-contained. Ganun din siya. Iba lang yung lengguwahe niya sa Egyptian, of iba yung language ng Egypt, pero ganun yung ibig nilang sabihin. Okay? Now, yung I am, that I am, okay, ito naman ay, kung sa Hebrew, makita natin, di ba, Haya. Sa Egyptian, it's YWY, YMY. It is read as Imi. Parang eme. Pero imi. Okay? Imi. Okay? It comes from the root word, Egyptian root word na YW or U, which also means exist or to be. And so same concept, right? Na makikita natin doon sa Book of the Heavenly Cow, specifically sa third tale ng Book of the Heavenly Cow. And then now, after many centuries, you have here Moses on the top of the mountain in the burning bush talking to God and God proclaiming himself as the what? The I am. And then after many years, right, when he was in the wilderness, he wrote about it, and he wrote it exactly in a way that an Egyptian contemporary reader would understand, okay, I'm very familiar with this phrase as well. And yet here you have the book of Exodus who's claiming that the true God is the one who is self-existent and not the Pharaoh who is in fact already dead. And the irony is that that phrase is written in the tomb. Right? Patay ito. The one who says he is self-existent, in fact, does not exist, did not exist. So that's the irony. Right? So according to John Currid, again, the Hebrew divine name revealed in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14 is Yahweh. And it derives from the Hebrew verb to be, which we have shown kanina. For a long time, Egyptologists have believed that the Egyptian verb to be, which we have shown, is linguistically related to the Hebrew to be. The Egyptian root word is you. Okay, so yung to be ng Egyptians, ganun din yung sinulat doon sa tomb, and then ganun din exactly yung sinulat ni Moses, but in a different language. And of course, the question would be, okay, which came first? Which came first? Well, the book of the Heavenly Cow, or the writing in the tomb of Pharaoh Seti, came first. It was written prior the writing of Exodus. The divine name, however, has already been used even before Moses' time. It was in fact used in the time of the patriarchs. Okay? So kahit nasabihin natin na teka, nauna yun eh. Hindi, pero ito ay ginamit na even ng mga patriarchs noon pa. Dated back in Genesis. So for example, Genesis chapter 22, and there are more texts. By myself I have sworn, declares Yahweh, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son. So that's the same context of existence. I am or he will be is the same thing. Okay? However, it's already been used even in centuries before the writing in the tomb existed. Okay? So they cannot claim, okay, Moses basically just copied it. No, it has already existed. So this was during the time of the patriarchs. So Currid again said, the Egyptians mimicked the Hebrews in the use of the deification formulation, I am that I am. By doing so, the Egyptians were attempting to vanquish and mock the Hebrew God. Yung mga Diyos-Diyosa nila, binibigyan nila ng mga salita at yung mga words na yon says that they are self-existent. Kinopya nila yung proclamation ng Diyos even to Abraham and even to Job. But here you have Moses writing it in Exodus and saying na okay, ito ang tunay na Diyos. Whatever you know about your pagan gods, hindi yun totoo. Okay? So again, whenever we read Exodus, we ought to look at it as a polemical writing, an attack to the Egyptians, an attack to any pagan gods, to any pagan beliefs. Okay, dito papasok yung sinasabi natin na cultural remembrance. Okay? Cultural remembrance. Ibig sabihin, there was an actual biblical historical event. Something happened in the beginning, merong biblical record or kung anong event yon, right? And then here you have the pagans who, of course, yung mga events like, for example, mga buhay ni Abraham. Abraham was a very famous man, wealthy man during his time. Okay? Marami siyang, meron siyang mga pamilya at napakarami niya mga servants. Okay? So, di ba nga sabi, he will become a father of all nations. So, he was very famous, right? And so, his name was known. And we know that he's known because even in the in the Arab nation, di ba, he's highly revered until now, right? Although their belief is the succession is in Esau instead of Isaac. Si promised son ng mga Muslim ay si Esau at hindi si Isaac. So basically, they know the story of Abraham. Even that, mga hindi believers, hindi Christians, they know Abraham. They knew Abraham. And so, yung storya for example, ni Abraham, nangyari talaga yon. It has become known. And here you have in the future, pagans, they used such stories. They used actual biblical events and turned them to myth. They tweaked and applied their own religion to such myths. Okay? Napakaraming stories, napakaraming pagan literature, napakaraming creation stories, napakaraming creation myths, napakaraming flood myths, mga mythologies about the flood, because it really happened. The flood happened. However, because of many years, and they were pagans and they were worshippers of deities, of mga Diyos-Diyosan, nag-imbento sila ng mga sarili nilang history at in-apply nila yung kanilang mga Diyos-Diyosan doon sa kanilang storya. And such stories became widely known in their time. And here you have an Old Testament-inspired biblical author, right? Inspired by the Holy Spirit revealed the words, revealed the actual biblical history events to that Old Testament biblical author, example, Moses. And here you have Moses, according to the book of Acts chapter 7. Remember, before Stephen died, he said he was preaching the Old Testament to the hearers, and he went through the story of the patriarchs and also Moses. And he mentioned that Moses was trained in all wisdom in Egypt. Sobrang galing ni Moses pagdating sa Egyptian culture. Alam na alam niya. Alam na pag-aralan niya mga pagan literature, mga literature ng Egyptians, alam niya yung mga kultura ng Egyptians. 40 years siyang tumira doon. Okay? Tapos in-inspire pa siya ng Holy Spirit para alam niya kung ano yung exactly nangyari ng Genesis 1. He knows what happened to Genesis chapter 6 to 9, what happened to the flood. At the same time, ginamit ng Diyos yung skills, yung wisdom, yung experience ni Moses being in the Egyptian royal household. And then he employs some of his known ideas in his writing for polemical purposes. And so he writes scripture, and he writes, binalikan niya or ni-reveal sa kanya ng Diyos kung ano talaga yung nangyari. But at the same time, gumamit siya ng mga ilang konsepto at salita. Pero yung ginamit niyang yon, hindi because, okay, for the sake of just copying. No, for the sake of attacking. For polemical purposes. Let me give you an example. Are you familiar with the law of retaliation? An eye for an eye. Where did you first hear that? Probably in the Bible, right? In the law, when Moses gave the law, right? Kapag may pinatay, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? That was an actual event. In Genesis chapter 9, after the flood, when Noah became the new Adam in a sense, he's now in a new world, right? God purged the wickedness, and here you have the new Adam. He installed the new Adam, who was Noah, and Noah now receives the same command that Adam did, right? Go therefore and multiply, right? Multiply, be fruitful and multiply. Napaghalo ko yung Matthew 28. Be fruitful and multiply, he also says to Noah. But also, because sin already existed in Noah's time, of course, there will be killings, there will be murders, and so sabi ng Diyos kay Noah, okay, if someone kills, make sure the punishment would also be death. He says in Genesis chapter 9, verse 6, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. The proper punishment for murder is punishment by death, God is saying. Here you have, many centuries after, there's what we call the Code of Hammurabi. It was a known stele Ito yung mga malalaking bato na kung saan maka-inscript yung mga batas nila. Si Hammurabi ay yung nagli-lead ng Mesopotamia ng mga time na yon. Isa sa mga famous laws doon sa Code of Hammurabi is this, an eye for an eye. The law of the eye or the law of the retaliation, or commonly known as, you probably heard of this, lex talionis. Lex talionis, yun yung an eye for an eye. Kapag may pinatay, kailangan mamatay din siya. Okay? And so here you have the MDR-MMC. Sorry. Yeah. Telling us that there's emergency. And so here you have Moses, the Old Testament inspired biblical author, right? He writes it in Exodus chapter 3. At ang ginamit niyang terms ay yung mas appropriate na nasa Code of Hammurabi. However, you can't say, okay, so Moses copied the Code of Hammurabi. No. Ultimately, nakuha din ng Code of Hammurabi yan sa Genesis chapter 9 verse 6. Okay? And marami pang ganyan sa Bible. That's just one example. Okay, let's 2:26 na, sorry. Bilisan lang po natin. Number 5, the rod of Moses. Ang mga rod or yung mga staff or yung mga scepter or yung mga flail, gamit po yan ni Pharaoh. Okay? Meron ding story na Egyptian tale na tinatawag na The Taking of Joppa. Okay, The Taking of Joppa. Kilala yan at ang bida dyan ay si Thutmose III. Titingnan din natin si Thutmose III next week. Okay? Isa siyang figure na titingnan natin sa mga pharaohs ng Egypt. Na doon yung sinasabi na ang rod ng isang pharaoh contains immense power. Okay? So nakikita nila ang mga rod as a symbol of authority and merong power within it. Okay? In fact, we can look at the pyramid texts. Okay? Ang pyramid texts, hindi siya nakalagay sa papel or sa kung ano mang. Ito yung nakaukit mismo sa pyramid. Okay? Or if you ask, okay, baka may magtanong po, ang pyramids po ba ay ginawa ng mga Israelite? Hindi po. Nauna ang mga pyramid. The pyramids predated even yung bondage ng mga Israel sa Egypt. Matagal na to. Sa Old Kingdom pa lang meron ng mga pyramids. Okay? Anyway, so nakalagay na yan sa pyramid texts. Okay? Yang for example, it says, "Thou sittest upon the throne of Osiris with thy scepter in your hand, that thou mightest give command to the living, and with the grip of thy wand in thy hand, that thou mightest give command to those secret of place." So, makikita natin doon, again, it's a common, it's a known idea na ang rod ng Pharaoh ay merong power. And here, again, if we look at Exodus, kita natin doon kung ilang beses ginawang katawa-tawa ni Moses sa writing. Hindi lang si Moses nung sinulat niya, even in actual history, ginawang katawa-tawa ng Diyos yung mga rod ng mga pharaoh. So for example, Exodus chapter 4 verse 17, nung tinawag na ng Diyos si Moses for his deliverance ministry, "And take in your hand this staff with which you shall do the signs." What else? Chapter 7, si Aaron din, meron din po siyang hiwalay na staff. Okay? Dalawa silang, tig-isa sila. Okay? If you're familiar with Exodus chapter 7, yung merong mga magicians si Pharaoh, tapos yung mga nagkaroon sila ng parang illusion. Okay? Na yung mga staff na yon ay naging snake. Okay? Maraming posisyon dyan. Yung iba sinasabi tinulungan sila ng demonyo. Yung iba, and I think this is the more common interpretation of this, maraming kind of illusion or magic pagdating doon nung mga panahon ng Ehipto. Okay? Marami silang mga hindi siya tunay na actual power. Okay? Pero ginawa itong katawa-tawa, especially how Moses wrote this, kasi it says here, Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Okay? What else? Si Moses, "Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. So clearly, parang pinapakita sa atin ng Exodus, wala talagang tunay na power ang staff ng Pharaoh at even ng kanyang mga magicians and servants. Ito pa yung irony niyan. Napakaganda ng itsura ng mga flails, staff ni Pharaoh. Tapos yung staff lamang nila Moses ay kahoy lamang. And yet, naswallow pa yung mga staff nila na naging ahas. Okay? Okay, number 6, last 2. Bilisan ko na lamang po. By the way, you can go to the restroom if you want. Plagues. Even yung plagues ay polemic. And so whenever we read the 10 plagues in Exodus, hindi lang yun pinapakita na hinuhusgahan ng Diyos ang Egypt. Rather, what? Sabi dito, and all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. Kumbaga, pinapakita din na walang silbi ang mga Diyos-Diyosan ng Egypt. Hindi lang ito para pakawalan ang Israel, pinapakita rin sa bawat plagues na walang silbi ang mga sinasamba ng Egypt. For example, mabilis, first plague, Nile turning into blood. Alam niyo po ba na ang Nile River ay tinatawag nilang deity, na ito ay nagbibigay ng buhay, source of life sa kanila. Anong ginawa ng Diyos? Naging river of death, punong-puno ng dugo. Hindi na siya source of life. And dahil ganun ang nangyari, anong tendency niyan? So syempre, maglalabasan ng mga palaka, right? Wala na, mamamatay sila sa river. So lumabas yung mga palaka, ayan na po yung second plague. Dumami yung mga palaka. Pero hindi lang yon. Kung ang Nile River was a river that was deified and worshipped by the Egyptians, ang mga palaka, sinasamba din po yan ng mga Egyptians. Okay? Bagyo lang yan, hindi yan plague. Tutuloy ko po ha. Okay. So for example, si Heket. Heket was a frog god that was worshipped by the Egyptians. And so now, instead of the frog god taking care of the Egyptians are now seeing the frogs attacking them. Right? So again, inaatake ng Diyos through Moses writing in Exodus. The writing of Exodus is saying na walang silbi ang inyong mga Diyos-Diyosan. In fact, papahama ka pa niyan. Third plague, the third plague? The third plague is about the gnats or the lice. Meron din pong Egyptian god of the earth and the soil. Okay? Walang nagawa ang kanilang Diyos na si Geb. What else? The fourth plague, the swarms of flies. Sobrang dami, wala ring magawa si Kepri, the beetle god. In the fifth plague, namatay ang mga cattle, namatay ang mga livestock, wala ring nagawa si Apis, the bull god, at si Hathor, the cow goddess. In fact, namatay ang maraming cows, namatay ang maraming bull, namatay ang maraming cattle. The fifth or the sixth is the boils, right? Nagkaroon ng maraming sakit sa balat ang mga Egyptians. Wala ring nagawa. Again, this is an attack to their healing gods. See, even your healing gods cannot do anything to heal you. Right? Si Sekhmet, si Imhotep, si Thoth are useless gods. Seventh plague, we see the hail and the thunderstorms. Well, to those who were worshiping the sky goddess, not Enshu, the god of atmosphere, Tefnut, the goddess of moisture, here is what God can bring. Hail and thunderstorms. These goddesses are useless. They don't exist. Number 8, ang nalagay ko dyan is locust devouring crop. I mean, that would be great, no? Locust devouring crop. But it's crop devouring locust. Okay? Sorry. Okay, the 8th plague. Okay? Okay, so maraming locust na nawala yung kanilang nasira ang agriculture ng Egypt. Walang nagawa. Si Min at si Nepre. Atake yon sa kanila. And of course, we know the ninth plague, the darkness. Wala po talaga yan. Talagang madilim po yan. Okay, imagine nyo na lang, nagyan yung ninth plague, wala po kahit anong ilaw dito. Okay? We'll talk more about that when we reach yung sermon natin dyan. But si Amun-Re, the sun god, was useless. And of course, the 10th plague is the death of the firstborn. And we see that it is also an attack to Pharaoh himself. It says in chapter 4, verse 22-23, thus says Yahweh, Israel is my firstborn son. And I say to you, let my son go, Israel, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, Pharaoh, behold, I will kill your firstborn son. So Yahweh claims his firstborn son, Israel, from the self-proclaimed firstborn son of Re. Diba? Sabi ni Douglas Stewart, by the plagues, God demonstrated his superiority to all the supposed other gods. And by demonstrating that superiority in connection with the supposed gods of the greatest economic, political, military power of the day, God showed his sovereignty over all the nations of the earth and their gods. This was an evangelistic enterprise. Since such gods could not save, it was appropriate for God to dissuade those who would sincerely seek the truth from holding to a belief system that would guarantee their ultimate destruction. A good God, therefore, made sure that the belief system of the Egyptians, and for that matter, all pagan cultures, by logical extension, was exposed as fraudulent and foolish. Right? Pinamuka ni Moses na fraud ang kanilang mga Diyos-Diyosan at ito ay folly lamang. Last na lamang po, yung parting of the Red Sea because merong story din sa Westcar Papyrus, again, that predates the actual Exodus story, where we can see there in the third tale, it says, then said the chief lector, the J-monk, his magic sayings, he placed one side of the water of the lake upon the other. So ang story lamang nito ay meron silang hinahanap at kailangan yung chief lector, hinati niya yung tubig para makita yung kanilang hinahanap. So yung pagpart ng waters is something that was famous even in their literature ng mga time na iyon. Okay? And then he brought it back. He brought back the water of the lake to its position. So, again, makikita natin dito na itong mga sinulat ng mga pagans na kanilang tinuturing na mythology at meron pang mga deified human figures dito, merong actual gods and goddesses silang wino-worship through these stories, known stories, which some of them predated pa yung actual Exodus writing and the actual Exodus event. Moses used these things in order to attack them. Hindi lang niya kinopya for the sake of copying. No, he used some of the words and some of the concepts so that the reader would understand, okay, these gods and goddesses are a fraud. And so we ought to read the book of Exodus in that way as well, polemically. Sabi ni John Curry, the writer was quite knowledgeable of Egyptian culture and religion. In order to criticize Egyptian practices and to demonstrate the truth of the Hebrew religion, he used that detailed understanding in a subtle but powerful way. He simply polemicized Egyptian beliefs in order to exalt Yahweh as the true sovereign of the universe. Okay? That was accomplished not only by employing linguistic parallels, but also by structuring the very events and objects of the episode as a critique of Egyptian practice. And so as a conclusion, the more we recognize the polemical nature of Exodus, the more clearly we see that it is not just a record of God's mighty acts, but a theological assault on every rival to Yahweh. So that ends our lecture. Next week po, titingnan natin yung pharaohs of Egypt para mas maintindihan natin yung historical context or setting Exodus. Sino yung mga pharaohs ng mga time na yon? Anong klase yung family nila? Family, sino yung kumupkop kay Moses? How was he like during that time? Of course, these are extra biblical accounts. Hindi natin sinasabi na ito ay mas angat pa sa scripture, no? Pero makakatulong ito sa atin so that whenever we read Exodus, it adds more color or it adds more weight sa ating understanding of what was going on in that time. So, any questions? Yes. Feel free po to go to the restroom dahil since it's already late.
Thanks for the lecture, Pass. I wrote here, what is it with a cow or calves? How come Aaron as well as Jeroboam both made golden calves as a representation of God? Was it tied to the Egyptian myths, or is there any connection there?
Right, that's a good question. So, pagdating sa Egyptian culture, marami talaga po silang Diyos-Diyosan. Para silang modern day Hinduism na sobrang dami nilang Diyos. So in fact, marami sa mga hayop ay mga Diyos-Diyosan nila. Okay? So even before si Aaron, even before they actually created the calf, marami na silang cattle gods. Okay? So for example, si Moses, of course, it was wrong for Aaron to even build one, but mas nakakagalit lalo yung para silang Egyptians noong nag-build sila ng calf. Yun yung irony pagdating doon sa part na Exodus na yon. It's like they left Egypt, but they brought Egypt. So parang ganun yung nangyari. And nakakagalit yun, kaya nga binato ni Moses yung tablets. So yes, it's not as if those calves originated in the minds of Aaron. No, meron ng familiar figures of gods and goddesses in their time. So, yun. So yun yung parang essence nun. Talagang dinala nila yung Egypt. Parang, kumbaga, after living there for many years, they were like Egyptians already. And so even though they escaped through the mighty acts of God, dala nila yung kung sino sila. Parang ganun. Does that make sense?
Yes, Pass.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sige, meron pa po questions? Yes.
Pas, kasi nasabi mo kanina na parang dun sa 40 years sinulat ni Moses yung Pentateuch. Tama ba, Pas?
Yes.
Yung question ko, Pas, the same rin ba yung ibang books na may polemical aspect with the rest of the Pentateuch?
Yes. Even in Genesis, there are polemical narratives there. And I would say even Genesis chapter 1, there is a known creation myth. I know kasi usually yung mga atheists ngayon, they would those who undermine the authority of scriptures, especially the book of Genesis, they would say, "Oh, Moses just copied it. Whoever wrote it, he just copied it from a known creation myth." Right? So for example, there is a known creation myth entitled Enuma Elish. Enuma Elish was where may mga characters doon. For example, si Marduk. Si Marduk was a known warrior na meron siyang kinalaban, tapos yung kinalaban niya bumuka yung ulo, tapos from there nagkaroon ng land, nagkaroon ng trees. May mga ganon. So meron siyang parallel sa Genesis chapter 1 how Moses wrote the actual creation narrative, but we can't say that Moses just wrote it for the sake of copying it, or Moses copied it just for the sake of copying it. No, I would even say na may polemical aspect doon sa Genesis chapter 1 because Enuma Elish was a known creation myth. And also, hindi lang yun, pati sa flood story. Sa flood story, there's what we call the Epic of Gilgamesh, where there's a certain figure whose name was Utnapishtim, na kung saan gumawa siya ng boat at nilagay niya yung mga hayop doon. So that's also a pagan myth. There are parallels when you read Genesis chapter 6 to 9. But again, we can't say that Moses copied it for the sake of copying it. I would even say he wrote it also as a polemic. So, pero ayan I just want to make it clear. I know there's si Wesley Huff, in-address niya ito at sinabi niya na maraming parallels, pero marami rin namang hindi parallels. And that is also true, right? Moses did not intend to copy the entire pagan myth, right? But yung mga specific stories within that myths or within those myths, yun yung highlighted sa kanyang sulat. So yes, there are more polemical writings in the Pentateuch, I would say.
Second question, Bas. With this like way of Moses to attack the false gods, Bas, can you say, Bas, na there's a place then as Christians for us to do polemics against false religion?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yes. Yes. In fact, polemics is a course in seminary, just like apologetics is. So meron talagang polemics. So there's a proper way to converse and to argue in a way that would not in a mocking way na for the sake of mocking, rather to expose the fraudulent beliefs of the anti-Christians. So yeah, definitely there's a place for that. Yeah.
Thank you, Bas.
Thank you. Meron pa po ba? Yes. May tanong talaga? Sige.
Moses had a staff, right? And Pharaoh had a staff. The magicians had the staff, right? How did
What?
the magicians turn it to a snake?
Ano daw? Sorry?
Sabi niya pas, yung rod daw nung magicians, paano naging snake kung wala naman silang power.
Right. So maganda yung question mo, Kian. Dahil dyan, si Daddy, mag-uusap kayo mamaya, sasagutin ni Daddy yan. Marami kasing paniniwala dyan. Merong mga naniniwala na meron talagang nagbago talaga yung staff at naging ahas talaga. Tapos ang sabi ng ilan ay ito daw ay sa tulong ng demonyo, sa tulong ni Satanas. Meron din naman na ako personally, medyo dito ko, again, yun yung aking paniniwala lang. Okay lang naman kahit ano doon yung paniniwala, no? So meron namang iba na sinasabi nila, ito yung aking paniniwala na hindi, gumamit lang din ng ilusyon ang mga Egyptian magicians ni Pharaoh. Kasi it's something na na prevalent na nangyayari din talaga sa kultura nila, maraming ganun. So yun. Nasagot ko ba? Okay. Tanong ka pa kay Daddy ng madami. Okay. You're welcome. Meron pa po ba last question? Yes.
Paano po nakatulong yung Egyptian background ni Moses sa pagsulat ng Genesis?
Paano nakatulog?
Nakatulong.
Paano nakatulong?
Egyptian,
Paano nakatulong yung
Egyptian background ni Moses sa pagsulat niya ng Genesis?
I would say mas kita mo yung understanding niya sa Egyptian culture noong ang setting na ay sa Egypt. However, natutunan din niya kasi sa Egypt kung paano magsulat. So I think even yung yung galing niya sa polemics, very much Egyptian yung how he wrote, parang ganon. So pagdating doon sa kultura nila Abraham, I would say siguro may mga napag-aralan siya, which medyo itatakal ko din siya later sa sermon. Nung siya ay, 'di ba, after siyang ampunin ni Pharaoh's daughter, kailangan siyang i-nurse si Moses. Ibinigay uli siya sa kanyang nanay, kay Jochebed. Tumagal pa siya doon, mga around 3 to 4 years pa yon. Matagal yon. Hindi yon a few years lang. So, it is implied na sila Jochebed bilang faithful at kaya natin ini-imply yun, kaya kasi sabi kasi sa Hebrews 11, yung author ng Hebrews, sinasabing faithful yung parents ni Moses. So pwede natin sabihin na okay, tinuruan talaga si Moses ng probably about God, no? So other than him being inspired nung sinulat niya, pati yung Genesis, I would even say na meron siyang at least idea because of his parents. So, pero yung how he wrote the Pentateuch, malaki yung naitulong ng kanyang training sa Egypt doon. More on the sulat. Okay. Alright, sige, let's pray. Our Most High God and Heavenly Father, salamat po Panginoon sa lecture natin ngayong hapon. Nawa Panginoon ay ito'y makatulong sa amin sa aming understanding of the book of Exodus, especially later, especially whenever we hear the Exodus sermons. Salamat Panginoon na alam namin na while you reveal to us in a special way ang inyong salita through the Bible, we also know, O Lord, that sa inyong providensya gumamit kayo ng mga tao, even those who reject you, Panginoon, na ikaw, na ginamit mo sila, Panginoon Diyos, para mas maging malinaw sa amin ang inyong mighty acts nung mga panahon na iyon. So salamat po, Panginoon, nawa ay mas ma-appreciate namin ang inyong work, mas lalo, Lord, as we again hear the gospel preached to us. Salamat po. We praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.